All right. Tisa. Burkatadana Yelahano Melagola, Misharkadishishano, but Mistata Vitavanola, so Debrive Torah. Okay. Tisa. Where did we end up in the last parsha, which was Tetzaveh?
Well, the first paragraph.
Right? We ended with the incense altar, the golden altar. It's in the holy place, for lack of better English words. Shabbat Shalom, Rebbitzin. So we jump from there to Tisa. Now, we have a lot of things to talk about in this, and it's very detailed. And I don't know how far we're going to get, to be honest with you, because there's just a lot here. So, let's see here. We are going to be talking about a shekel. We're going to be talking about oil.
We're going to talk about half shekel.
Half shekels, yes. So we have a lot to get. A lot to get through. Of course, Tisa is known for the Egel Zahav, the golden calf. Yeah, we're not going to get there today.
Too busy on shekels.
Yeah.
Another year.
Another year. Yeah, it's not. We're not going to get there because it's
Buried.
it's there, and there's a lot, and Rashi has a lot to discuss in this, so we're not going to get there. But just as a side note for everyone who's going to listen, and eventually, not now, but later as well, I heard a little bit of the drosh notes or the highlights from what Slade Henson's going to teach. Yeah, it's
Good stuff.
yeah. He's going to ask some interesting questions.
You have to answer?
No, you don't have to answer. But they're going to make you think,
Okay.
and yeah, it's very interesting that what he's going to be teaching. I'm not going to give any more details. Those who are going to be watching this live stream a little bit later, or whenever you guys do watch it, it'll be up on YouTube following today, which is March 7th, 2026. But it will be up on YouTube. It's its own separate video, edited and all that stuff. So, just so for everyone to know that today, all his new messages or his drushot are really good, but today's is going to be a good one. So, I'll have it up for those next, not next week, tomorrow, which technically is next week. But anyway, moving on. We are going to Shmot, Exodus, chapter 30. We're going to start at verse 11. I'm just going to start the English translation of Rashi from the Art Scroll. I know that's backwards, so but just letting you know. Okay. Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "When you will take a census of the children of Israel according to their counts, every man shall give Hashem an atonement for his soul when counting them, and there will be no plague among them when counting them. This is what they shall give, everyone who passes among the counted, half of the shekel, by the holy shekel. The shekel is 20 gerah. Half of the shekel is a portion to Hashem." All right. Now, Rashi, what does he say? When you will take, meaning when you take a census. The Hebrew word here, which looks like Tisa, right, means taking, as it is rendered by the Targum Onkelos. Remember that the Targum Onkelos is an Aramaic Targum by a gentleman by the name of Onkelos, who is believed to be a convert. Okay. I could be wrong on that, but I think that is accurate. The verse is saying, when you will wish to take the total of their number, to know how many there are, right? How many Israelites you would think you're counting? Okay. Do not count them by heads. In other words, what he's saying is here, don't count the people, right? Don't count each individual person. So how do you do the count? Right. Rather, let each one give a half shekel, and you will count the shekelim. So you count the shekels, or the half shekels, right? And you will thereby know their number. So how did they count? By counting a half shekel. Okay.
That's men only.
Right, and then when you see the other censuses, the words, sensot, funny, that's funny. But so the idea is there was the count, right? What was the count? Well, like 600 some odd thousand men, right?
Of a certain age.
And it's
Of
over
us
the age of 20.
over the age of 20. So let's keep on moving. And there will be no plague among them. Otherwise, there will be a plague. For the evil eye can affect that which has been counted. And pestilence can come upon them, as we found in the days of David. Okay, so what is the evil eye? Being stingy, not giving, not, I'm not giving any money at all. That's the evil eye. It's, I mean, a lot of people like to postulate a lot of big things about the evil eye, but in biblically wise, the evil eye is just being stingy. Okay.
I have a quick
Yeah.
question. In our Jewish Bible here, it says they're to pay a ransom
Okay.
for his life.
Okay.
I just find that kind of
The wording that they use, like ransom for their life, is that,
Yeah. 'Cause you're,
Right. And here, what this English translation is saying is what, and now I lost my place, shall give Hashem an atonement for his soul.
so it's just ransom. I
Right.
think of something,
Right.
different than.
And that's
Yes, I do.
and that's the unfortunate about English, is that the translations are kind of all over the map, depending on, and I'm not saying, because that's a complete Jewish Bible, so I'm not necessarily saying that is a wrong translation.
No, I just wanted to know
Why they put it.
what that word meant.
So
Okay.
how do women atone for their soul?
Let's keep on reading. So, okay, so let's see here. Making sure, okay, you will know their number. The Torah states, and this is the note, the Torah states that when Moses will count the children of Israel, they should each should give half shekel. It is not evident from the Torah itself that they are counted by these coins. Rashi says that this is so. Furthermore, he points out that the verse is not a command to count the people. It is a general statement. Should Moses wish to count them, he should count them by the half shekel. And you can see Rashi in verse 16 of this chapter. And moving on. So, and then when we're talking about the counting of, or founding in the days of David or David, he's quoting 2 Samuel 24, 1 through 10. King David ordered his general Joab to take a census of the nation. Immediately thereafter, 70,000 people died in a plague of which David himself and the prophet God, Gad, blamed on the improperly conducted census. Right? We've heard that story before. I hope you have. So that's an interesting note. Now, when we were talking about men, women, children, it looks like here that they're counting the men, mainly the fighting age men. Okay. Where does it state that they ever count women and children in Torah? I don't know either. So right now, what we're talking about is the fighting age men. At least that's what Rashi's talking about. Okay, we're talking
Start with 20.
right 20 and over. So
So how'd they come up with the age of 20? Because when you have the
Bar
Bar
mitzvah's
mitzvah.
at 13, yeah.
that's when you basically become a man and take on responsibility
Of the covenant.
of the
Right.
covenant. Oh, just the
Military.
covenant.
Just think of
Okay.
military, thinking of.
it's like we're talking to military age. We're talking about the age of 20. Why is that a big deal?
Even an 18-year-old
Right.
military, they-
So
maybe
we're
that's
talking
not-
20 is the age of military service, right? And then we're talking about like a bar mitzvah, which it's kind of like 13, 12, 13-ish. You know, is it a absolute set date? No, not so much all the time, but all right. Okay, so this is what they shall give. Okay, so we're talking verse 13. God showed Moses a sort of coin of fire, whose weight was a half shekel, and told him that you should give a coin like this. So it's kind of weird, right? How do we know?
A half shekel on you?
No, but I have a coin, no, right? So Hashem was like, you want a coin like this, and so
Fire?
yeah, well, I mean, a coin of fire, meaning that's how Hashem showed the coin, right? I mean, it seems like they have to make a new coin. I don't know. But who passes among the counted? It is the practice of those who count to have those who are counted pass before them as one after the other. So too the word in each that will pass beneath the rod, which he's quoting Jeremiah 33. No, I apologize. Leviticus 27:32. And so too the word in the phrase, the flocks will pass by the counter, and that is Jeremiah 33:13. So he's just using, like, this word is used here in the same idea of the counting. Okay. So half of the shekel by the holy shekel. Yeah. Okay, so of the weight of the shekel that I have set for you, against which to weigh the shekelim of the hekdesh, such as the shekelim mentioned in the passages which deal with the arachin and the redemption from hekdesh of an inherited field. All right, that makes perfect sense. I am right there with you guys. We're there. Let's move on to the next verse because we all understand this one. No, okay. So just so they get the word hekdesh, Hekdesh, as far as like the transliteration is concerned, this word means that which has been consecrated. So hekdesh kind of sounds like kodesh, right? When you take it, so the idea is the root seems to be the same, right? So kodesh, kodeshim, hekdesh, they're hamikdash. Okay. All right. So we're understanding that hekdesh is consecrated. So the weight of the shekel that I've set for you, against which to weight the consecrated shekelim. How about that? Okay. Such as the shekelim mentioned in the passages deal with the arachin. it's the value. With the value. So the idea is the English word is the value. So here's the note. Pledges of money to hekdesh, to consecrate, right, to the consecrated, expressed by using the term arech, literally value, with the reference to an individual group or group of individuals. The amount of erech, value, is stipulated in the Torah and is dependent on the age and gender of the one whose value is pledged. Arech. Okay. The shekel is 20 gera. Now, a gera is 1/20th of a shekel. Ergo, 20 gera is kind of like a nickel to a dollar, right? So that is an explanation of a gera. If you want to know exactly what a gera is, we don't have an exact weight because it's back in the day, but the idea is a gera is 0.57 to 0.6 grams. And so a actual 20 of those equals 1 shekel. So there you go. So I guess you can just take 0.6 or 0.5 times 20, and there's your weight of a shekel within. Okay. 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 Moving on. This means, and we're talking about the shekels, 20 gera. This means the same as the Aramaic word ma'ah. Gera, ma'ah are the same thing because we're talking about Hebrew, Aramaic. Okay. So to this word, a gera, in the book of Shmuel, in the verse, he will come to bow down to him for an agora of silver and a loaf of bread. So an agora of silver, which is the same thing as a ma'ah, which is the same thing as a gera, which is 1/20th of a shekel, 0.6 grams is the way I'm reading, and I could be wrong, but I think that's what it looks like. Okay. All right, so the shekel is 20 gera. We are still on verse number 13. So is everybody. Rashi is saying, for the whole shekel is composed of 4 zuz, Z-U-Z, okay, or zuz. There you go. That sounds better. And the zuz was originally 5 ma'ah, or 5 gera, or geras, something like that. All right. So which is 5/20th of a shekel. Is my math counting? Something like, no?
No,
Oh, okay.
Basically
Okay.
a quarter.
But they came and added 1/6 to it and raised the weight of the zuz to 6 silver ma'ah. So there was a change. Now it's 6 instead of 5. And half of this shekel that I have mentioned to you in this verse, you shall give as a portion to Hashem. So 10 gera you give to Hashem, which is a half shekel. All right. In other words, you give the weight of the shekel, and it's like 5, a nickel to a dollar, right? So you give how many nickels to make up 50 cents, right? Versus
Was this a one-time thing, or did this become a yearly?
this becomes a yearly thing.
Is this what was called the temple tax in Yeshua's time?
Well, yeah. When you're talking about the temple tax, the answer is yes and no, right? So you had, yes, there's the temple tax as a half shekel. In fact, Yeshua mentions it to Kepha with the fish,
Right,
with
that's what I was
the
thinking of.
shekel in the fish's mouth, right? So one whole shekel, 5, half
Which
for,
pays for 2 people.
which pays for 2 people. Yes, exactly. So that was temple tax. But you also have tithing, which people called a tax too.
Okay, but that being a half shekel, is this the same as this that we're reading about now?
Yes, this is the start of the half shekel tax,
Okay.
right? And from this point forward, yes, to give a half shekel for, well, we're going to talk about a little bit what's it for, right? What is the half shekel for? It's for temple maintenance, purchasing of sacrifices for Israel, right? So you have community sacrifices like Pesach is coming, right? Although people bring their own
You got your tomato
Pesach,
offerings too. I mean, you
right?
got daily
Your
offerings,
Talmud
you
offerings,
go with
right?
them.
Which is community offerings. That, right? When you have Sukkot and you have 70 bowls.
Not to mention the temple was so big, the electric bill must have been killer.
That's
So-
funny.
There's a lot of wood.
There was a lot of wood being used back in those days. So but yeah, it's for temple maintenance and things like that and buying sacrifices. So keep on moving. But yes, people would call like the tithe a tax, which it's not, right? The temple tax is, then you have the tithe, and then you got 3 tithes. Is- Hmm?
One of them is your vacation fund.
Yeah, one of them's your vacation fund for the regalim, or the 3 moedim that you walk to. Regalim, walk, legs. And so the second tithe was your savings account for that. So Hashem commanded Israel to have a savings account and commanded them to actually put a tenth into it, right? It's fun stuff. And then you had the third one, which was done every 3 years, and that was the temple for the poor. All right, moving on. Okay. Now we are going to verse 14. Verse 14 states, just reading it out, everyone who passes among the counted from the age of 20 years and up shall give the portion of Hashem. Now, this is the counting of those that are 20 years and up. So Rashi says this, from the age of 20 years and up, the Torah teaches you here that one who is less than 20 does not go out to serve in the army, nor is he counted in the census among adult men if they're less than 20, except for which tribe? Levi, right? The Levites were counted younger. Rashi mentions that here, so we'll keep on moving. To atone for your souls, verse, or as another English translation would say, ransom. To atone for your souls, so that you should not suffer a plague because of the counting. Right? This is a preemptive thing to account, if you don't give this, there will be a plague. So what happens? If you give it, you won't get the plague, but if you don't give it, you'll get a plague. An alternative explanation to this, devar cher, of the phrase to atone for your souls is the following. This was written because the Torah intimated to the Israelites here that they were to have 3 offerings. Okay. For a portion to Hashem is written here 3 times in the text, according to Rashi. Okay. The first of them is the offering of silver for the sockets of the Mishkan. Okay. As Moses counted the Israelites when they commenced with the contribution for the Mishkan, where each individual gave a half shekel. So here, this half shekel was for the sockets of the Mishkan, which is the tabernacle. Right? Okay. It amounted to 100 kikar. Now, yeah, it's a kikar is a form of weight. Let me see here. It is approximately 75 pounds. Or another word for it would be a talent. A talent, a kikar. about 75 pounds. But you know, this is kind of a, you know, is it exactly 75 pounds? Yeah, I have no idea. It's just the idea of that amount of weight of a kakar. Okay. So, and it's amounted, okay. Each individual gave a half shekel, which amounted to 100 kikar. So 75 times 100. What's that? 7,500? Yeah, 7,500. Right? So 7,500 pounds-ish of silver, as it says, and the silver from those who were counted of the assembly was 100 kikar, 100 talents. If you like that word. Okay. The sockets of the Mishkan were made from these half shekalim. As it says, 100 kikar of silver were, and this is from 38:27 of Shemot. So in other words, he goes forward and says, that's what this means.
And when we're saying the sockets of the Mishkan,
Yes.
what do we mean exactly?
So when you have like the sockets to put up the tent, the curtains, you have things that connect to a socket.
Weren't there bases solid silver?
Right, so there was
Was-
bases, but you know, you had ropes coming in and the sockets, right, there's, I would have to break out which I don't have, break out an idea of where the sockets would go, but the sockets were a thing.
Okay.
There were many to keep the tent up. Okay.
I don't know if they were part of putting the poles together too.
No, the poles, yeah, that's another thing. Just think of how to fasten things together. There were sockets everywhere to fasten these things together. This is the best non-answer I can give. That's a good non-answer. Thank you. All right. So that was the first offering. So the half shekel gives about, here at this time frame, 7,500-ish pounds of silver for the making of the sockets for this interpretation. Now, but this one is for this particular half shekel during this year is solely for the Mishkan, for the tabernacle. The second offering alluded to here also came through counting, as Moses counted them once the Mishkan was set up or erected. Right? So the second offering here alluded to those who came through the counting as Moses counted them once in the Mishkan. This is the counting mentioned at the beginning of the book of Numbers, or Bed Midbar. So this is the second, the counting here, the second offering, I would say, is the half shekel for the counting of before they traveled, right, away from Mount Sinai, and which is the first counting or census taken in the book of Bed Midbar. So, in other words, whenever there was a census taken, how were they counted, according to Rashi?
By taking money.
By having a half shekel. They counted a half shekel. Okay.
Quick question now.
Yeah.
So this is all taking place before the golden calf. So Moses hasn't gone up on Mount Sinai yet, but they're being instructed to collect money for the Mishkan, but they don't have the instruction for the Mishkan yet? Or is there some sort of a time, it's not necessarily
Things aren't always in
chronological?
order. Things aren't always in order.
Right.
So that's what you can do.
Yeah.
It's not chronological.
Yeah, it's not. We're not talking chronological here because you're right. It doesn't really make much sense. And
Okay.
Moshe hasn't gone up yet.
Right.
Okay.
The Egos Asahav hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So yeah. So we're talking about why are we counting? Why are we doing all this stuff when Moshe hasn't come down
Right.
from Mount Sinai yet? Yeah. Okay. So this is the second offering. This is the counting mentioned at the beginning of the book of Numbers in the verse on the first of the second month in the second year. Right? This is second year since what? Since leaving Egypt. Okay. Okay. In this offering, each individual gave a half shekel. These shekalim were used to buy the communal mizbech. All right. So terms that it would be great to know, Hebrew terms, right? We have Mishkan, which is what? Tabernacle. You got Mikdash or Beit HaMikdash, which is the temple. And then you have the Mizbeach, which is, what would be a good transliteration? Mizbeach, which the CH is like a chut. Mizbeach. That is the altar, right? That means altar, right? So you have the golden Mizbeach.
Altar?
Hmm?
Any altar? Or?
Well, it's the altar definitely in the tabernacle in the temple, but you have like the golden Mizbeach,
Okay.
and then you have the Mizbeach for offerings of animals, right? Because they're two different things, right? The Mizbeach, golden Mizbeach is for incense, right? And then you have animals for the other one. Okay. So when you see terms like that, now, I know there's a lot of Hebrew that's thrown around, but there's certain terms that if you know these terms, you can try to get the idea of relevance, right? And we're at least, when you hear the word Mizbeach, Rabbi Bernstein, may his memory be blessed, would say Mizbeach a lot. And I'm like, at first, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he's like, it's just the altar. It's just the altar. It's just what it means, is altar. And so you hear it, Mizbeach, HaMikdash, the Mishkan. You hear these things over and over and over again, you'll soon get the idea that we're talking about certain things. All right. So this is the second offering we're in the midst of right now, or of this explanation, right? Because remember, there was two. This is the second, or the alternate explanation Rashi is giving. All right. So the second one is for the counting of the book of Numbers, the first counting of the book of Numbers. On the first of the second month in the second year, these shekalim were used to buy the communal Mizbeach offerings of each year. The poor and rich were treated equally with regard to these half shekalim. In other words, for the buying of the sacrifices for the altar of Israel, everyone gave the same amount.
You're part of a community that way.
Yes, the community. So the half shekel was part of that. Okay. About that second offering, it says to atone for your souls, because Mizbeach offerings come for atonement. So to atone for your souls implies here, this is the note, and it might help explain some of this, that some sin had been committed for which the Israelites had to atone. According to Rashi's first explanation, the atonement is a preemptive one. It will prevent a plague from arising from the upcoming census. According to his second explanation, the verse alludes to the contribution toward communal mizbeach, or altar offerings, which will provide atonement on a regular basis. So,
You know, and everyone having to pay the same amount, then the wealthy couldn't pay more
yes,
and expect more privileges
Right.
or something.
Right.
that would be
You know, it
correct.
keeps everyone the same.
Keeps everyone the same. You're absolutely right. All right, and so third offering of the three offerings of this explanation. It seems long, but when you read it, it's actually kind of short. But the third offering alluded to is the offering for the Mishkan itself. As it says, all who set aside an offering of silver and copper. Rather, each individual contributed as much as his heart moved him to contribute. Okay, so the third offering is the voluntary, as much as Hashem fills your heart to lead to give, you give.
So when Jesus was talking about the widow that gave
Yeah.
all she had.
Yes, this would be the type of offering. Where this is the willful offer, voluntary offering to give. And so that would be that, right? Now, as far as like the temple half shekel, yeah, poor, rich, you gave the same. Now, does that mean that you couldn't pay for somebody else? No, that does not mean that, right?
Yeah, that doesn't mean
You can pay for somebody. You can pay somebody else's half shekel. Why? Yeshua did it,
Yeah, sure.
right?
Because some people might not have.
Some people might not have it, but everyone has need. Okay. Okay.
You mean everybody that come out of Egypt didn't come out with a bunch of gold and silver and everything else? They did just certain numbers come out with? And
No, everybody came out. There's people that came out with
Maybe some of them blew it all already.
yeah, they
Those
spent
people
on
that win the
desert
lottery.
Desert desserts.
Desert
Yeah,
desserts.
desert
So,
convenience.
yeah. So the question was, wasn't the Israelites have some wealth attributed from the Egyptians? The answer would be yes. Yes, yes, absolutely. So that's where they actually probably had the half shekel to give.
Right, but I mean, in the New Testament, there would be widows and.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
didn't carry through time to
Right.
poor
That's-
people
Yes.
in Israel.
Yeah.
No, yeah, yes, absolutely right. Yeah, there is a time gap and an
They were
exile in
redundant
between that.
about Anybody coming out of Egypt didn't have money. That was their fault.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
They were shoveling it out.
All right. Now we're going to verse 16.
Yeah.
Do you know, you shall take the silver of the atonements from the children of Israel and give it for the work of the tent of meeting, and it shall be a remembrance before Hashem for the children of Israel to atone for your souls. All right. And give it for the work in the tent of meeting. Right? You have learned, this is Rashi, from this that Moshe was commanded to count them at the time of the beginning of the contribution toward the Mishkan, the tabernacle, right? Reference for that, see here, well, no. Siftei Chachamim. Rashi noted above that the beginning of this passage, when you take a census, is not a command to count the people, but rather it is a general rule. Should you wish to count them, do so by the half shekalim. A verse, however, is a command to count the people before the erection of the Mishkan. So it looks like on the first of the second month in the second year, in this offering, each individual gave a half shekel. These shekalim were used by I already read that one. I'm wrong spot. You have learned from this, right, and you give it for the work of the tent of meeting, that Moses was commanded to count them at the time of the beginning of the contribution toward the Mishkan. So the census before the building of the Mishkan here is what Rashi's saying. After the incident of the golden calf. So in other words, it was at the beginning of the contribution toward the Mishkan after the golden calf. So now we're talking kind of a timeline here. I'm trying not to confuse you. The command was the count by the half shekel. The time frame was after the golden calf, before the building of the Mishkan. The census happened, is what Rashi is saying here. Okay. It sounds confusing as I'm reading it to you, right? It's like, because after the golden calf, there was a plague. We haven't gotten there yet, and we're not going to get there today, but okay. Okay. And as it says, and Hashem smote the people, right? That's Shemot 32:35. This can be compared to a flock of sheep precious to its owner that had been stricken by pestilence. Once the pestilence has ended, the owner said to the shepherd, "Please count my sheep and ascertain how many of them are left, to make it known the flock is precious to him." So basically, the count was done after the golden calf, after the plague, to see how many are left. That sounds kind of, I don't know.
Well,
Bad,
and
but
then
it's-
they also killed.
Yeah.
I mean, there were
3,000.
yeah.
Who
3,000
who did that?
The Levi.
Levi, yeah.
Levi did.
The
And then
Levi.
They had the plague, so
Right. So you had the plague and 3,000 at the Levi. So moving on. Okay. So basically, Hashem wanted the count done, or Moses wanted the count done after the golden calf, after the results of the Levi doing their thing, and after the plagues um, aftermath. Let's just say. Okay. So it is impossible to say that this counting, which is the subject of our passage, is the same one mentioned in the book of Numbers, right? Rashi is saying it is impossible to say this is the same counting or a different counting than the one mentioned in the book of Numbers. For it says regarding that census. All right, so I'm going to give an explanation of this, of why he thinks it's impossible to state. Okay. On the first of the second month, and the Mishkan was erected on the first of the first month. Right, so you had 1 month in between, right? Okay. As it says, on the day of that first month, on the first of the month you shall erect, right? And that is Shemot 40, verse 2. And it is from this counting of our passage that the sockets of the Mishkan were made from its shekalim, as it says, and there were 100 kikar silver to cast. We're talking about Exodus 38:27. Okay, you have thus learned that there were two countings, one at the beginning of their contributions toward the Mishkan, after Yom Kippur of the first year after the Exodus. Why do we say that? Okay. So, well, the new year, yes, is just before Yom Kippur, right? But that's not what they're talking about. What day did Moshe come down on the second descent with the second tablets? Mm-mm. He came down on the 17th of Tammuz after the first tablets. The second time was Shavuot? No. He came down after the second one on Yom Kippur.
That's right. That's right.
Right? So he came down with the second tablets after Yom Kippur. Okay? We're not going to go into the details on that one, but just that's how the sages, the Chazal has counted it, worked it out. Moshe went up. You have what we call Shavuot, right? We have the 10 words by Hashem. And then Moshe went up. He went up for 40 days, right? And then when he came back down after the 40th day, it was on the 17th of Tammuz. And guess what happened on that day? The Egel HaZohav, the golden calf, of which Moshe knocked the sapphire, yes, sapphire tablets. He broke those tablets and then interceded for Israel. And then he went back up, not for another 40 days, but actually, say for another 80. I think it was 80 days. It was 40 from 17 to Tammuz does not come up to Yom Kippur. I think it's 80. I could be wrong, but I think it's 80. And then he came back down with the second tablets on Yom Kippur. Okay.
So what were the tablets made out of then?
Regular stone, from what I understand. But yes, Moshe carved them for Hashem, but Hashem carved the first one. And
Yeah, but Hashem did write.
yes, he did.
Write on
Yes.
both tablets.
Yeah, and man, there are some wonderful writings from the sages on that, of the sapphire tablets. White fire, black fire.
When you said both tablets, you mean both sets?
Yeah, both sets.
No, it says Moses himself carved the second set.
He carved the stone.
He carved the stone. Moshe wrote.
Oh, does it say that?
Moshe carved the stone.
Which I always thought.
Now, it sounded like you said the 10 words were given before Moses went up Sinai.
Yeah, well, people like, we don't wanna hear you.
We don't want to hear you.
Send Moses up.
So
Yeah.
they had those before Moses went up.
Yes.
But then he
Not
came
the
down,
tablets. They just,
not the
God
tablets,
just
but that's
spoke,
what was on the tablets that
Okay.
had already been given.
Sapphire, like they are,
Yes.
they are
Mm.
Kia. Nice.
and then God wrote them on the sapphire tablets.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the sapphire tablet. That's. I mean, that had to be some pretty nice looking tablets. And the way that they were, the sages say the way they were written is quite amazing. Actually, you could actually see. You could see through the words. Like,
Some of them were floating.
yeah. I mean, it's what were
Some of the letters were floating.
yeah. Some of the letters were actually floating up. Yep. It's. But the Zahav happened. Okay. Where are we at? Okay. So the golden calf, right? So we're talking about the work of the tent of the meeting, verse 16 of Shemot, chapter 30. Okay, was commanded to count them at the beginning of the contribution toward the Mishkan after the incident of the golden calf, because a plague had entered among them, as it said in him, Hashem smote the people. This can be compared to a flock of sheep, which I just read. Okay, so now I lost my page. Okay. Okay. That's where I'm at. And so we're talking about the first day of the first month, and we're talking about the after Yom Kippur, after the Exodus, during the second year in ER, once the Mishkan had been erected. So we're talking about 2 countings. So, but it's impossible to say that this counting is the same one mentioned. So he's saying it's 2, where you have 1 after the golden calf, and then you have 1 in the book of Bamidbar before they left. And there he's using the math, not math, but he's using, well, you could say the math, the explanation of the first temple tax was after Yom Kippur, which that is, I'm going to not try to confuse everybody, but this is the way he's counting for here, is the first year, which everybody says, well, Rosh Hashanah counts as a year. What we're counting here is the years post-Exodus, which is Nisan, right? So you have, during the first year outside of Egypt, at the Yom Kippur, when Yom Kippur, on that day, Moshe came down, that's when that first counting happened. And then you go past Nisan first again, which now starts the second year post-Egypt, and in the second month is when they did the counting. That's not confusing at all. But that's the way they're counting here. So there's 2 countings in 2 different years post-Exodus. Okay. Okay, and it says on the day of the first month, on the day of the first month, on the first of the month you shall erect. And it is coming from the counting of a passage that the sockets of the Mishkan were made from its shekalim, and it says, and they were 100 kikar silver to cast. You have thus learned that there were 2 countings, one at the beginning of the contribution toward the Mishkan, after Yom Kippur, of the first year after the Exodus, right, as we were just discussing. During the second year in the ER, which is the month after what? Nisan. Once the Mishkan had been erected. Okay. If you will say in objection, it is possible that in both countings the number of Israel would be equal, 603,550, 603,550. For regarding the silver of those who were counted among the assembly, this number is stated, as it were also stated at the total of the census in the book of Numbers. And all of those who were counted were 603,550. Were they the 2 censuses? Were there the 2 censuses not in 2 different years? That's the question. Were they in 2 different years? 2 censuses, 2 different years. Is it impossible? It is, and this is Rashi, it is impossible that there should not be, at the time of the first counting, those who were 19 years old who were not counted at the time, who had turned 20 by the time of the second counting. How then could there be 2 totals be identical?
Well, there was also a
There was a plague. The resolution of the matter is, with regard to the years of the men, they were counted twice in the same year, but in terms of reckoning from the time of the exodus from Egypt, they were in 2 different years. This is so because for the reckoning of time from the exodus from Egypt, we count from Nisan, the month of Exodus. Right? As I was just discussing that they were counting the, Exodus time frame. As we have learned in Tractate Rosh Hashanah, that Talmud. Okay.
There would also be maybe people who died.
That also could be people who died.
Sure.
Okay. And the Mishkan was fabricated in the first year after the Exodus and erected in the second year. Right? So you had the first year after the Exodus, they were making all the stuff. Right? And then it was erected on the beginning of the second year, which was the month of Nisan.
But it wasn't made for the whole first year because they didn't get the instructions until after Sinai.
You're correct. But it was still done in the second year. Apologize. First year.
Right, but they only had a few months.
Yeah, they only had a few months to gather and get everything together. You're right. We're not talking about it was the whole first year, as Greg was saying. It wasn't. It was within the first year that those were counted. That's a good distinction to make. We don't want to think that they had a whole year to do it. They had actually only a few months to do things. Yeah. All right.
Took them time to get permits.
Permits. Yes, they had to get permits.
Oh, and they had to melt a lot of gold and silver.
The wilderness authority had to be rendered. Okay, never mind. And the Mishkan was fabricated in the first year of the Exodus and erected in the second. And for a new year began on the first of Nisan. Right? So the new year began on the first of Nisan, but the years of the men are counted by the reckoning of the years of the world since creation. Okay.
What does that mean?
All right. So, but the years of men are counted by the reckoning of the years of the world since creation. What day is that? Rosh Hashanah. You want to know the birthday of the earth? Rosh Hashanah. So, moving on. And that's where they're doing the counting of men. Okay. Which I'll say that I'll repeat the sentence. But the years of I'm almost done. But the years of the men are counted by the reckoning of the years of the world since creation, which began from Tishrei. That's where we know that Rosh Hashanah is Tishrei 1. Okay. The 2 countings are thus found to have taken place in the same year. The first counting took place in Tishrei after Yom Kippur. Which date is Yom Kippur on? Tishrei the 10th. Okay. When the omnipresent was placated toward Israel and saw it fit to forgive them, and then the Israelites were commanded with regard to the building of the Mishkan. The second counting took place on the 1st of Iyar, which was the following second month of past, what's the second month? Because Nisan is the first month, right? From the work of the tent of the meeting, these are the sockets which were made with it, the silver shekelim of this collection. We're going to stop there. Shabbat shalom, everyone.